We're going to get into closing arguments. Let's watch the closing arguments section of the DUI mock trial video.
It was a beautiful summer day, marred by poor decisions. That's what you heard about today. That's what this is about. It might be tempting to feel sorry for this young, good-looking man who you think simply made a mistake, who simply had a lapse in judgment, and that's okay. But unfortunately, that lapse in judgment, those mistakes, have criminal consequences. So this is about choices and about consequences of those choices. He drove while under the influence of alcohol. He drove with a blood alcohol content above the legal limit. It's your job today to separate what feelings that you may have for this young man and to look to the facts of the case and apply it to the law that the judge is going to be giving you. And let's talk about that. 2 charges here. Driving with the BAC above the legal limit and driving while under the influence of alcohol. There's basically 2 things for each of those charges that we have to prove to you. For the BAC charge, the blood alcohol content charge, well, we have to prove that he drove a motor vehicle. Well, that's pretty much cut and dry. He admitted it. The officer had direct contact with him getting out of the car while he was in the car. There's no question that he drove a motor vehicle on August 20th of this year. The second proposition for the blood alcohol content charge is that when he drove that car, his alcohol concentration was a 0.08 or more. How did we prove that? Well, you had scientific evidence before you. The ECIR2 is not just a machine. It's an instrument. It's an instrument that is required to be kept within specific tolerances. It's required to function in a certain manner. It's required to be certified, to essentially be calibrated every 62 days. And this instrument wasn't only certified accurate every 62 days. In the case of the month of August, it was certified in a 31-day period, August 1st, September 1st, 20 days before he took the breath test, 10 days after. No problems. The instrument was working properly. There was no alcohol in the air around him that could have been picked up by this instrument when he blew into it. But you don't just have that evidence either, okay? Don't just believe it because the instrument tells you to. Yes, it's a scientific instrument, but look at it because your common sense tells you that that's a correct breath alcohol reading, that that's a correct BAC at the time he was driving. And how do you know that through your common sense? Well, you know that because you heard and saw all of the other evidence that corroborates the accuracy of this instrument, the blood alcohol content of 0.115. So let's talk about that for a little bit. What evidence do you have? Because it corroborates, and it also proves the other proposition for the driving while impaired charge, that the state has to prove that while he was driving under the influence of alcohol, or while he was driving a car, he did it while he was under the influence of alcohol. So what does that mean, under the influence of alcohol? First of all, we've never said drunk. We're not talking about somebody falling down, plastered, whatever words you want to use. The legal standard's impairment. It's under the influence. And that means you're going to hear from the judge that a person's under the influence of alcohol when, as a result of drinking any amount of alcohol, his mental or physical faculties are so impaired as to reduce his ability to think and act with ordinary care. Mental, thought processes, or physical. His physical ability to perform simple tasks. His physical ability to perform the not so simple task that we all take for granted, that of driving a car. They're so impaired as to reduce his ability to think and act with ordinary care. What do we have here? We have divided attention activities. The standardized field sobriety test. We have the divided attention activity of driving a motor vehicle. What do you have to do to keep control of a motor vehicle? You've got to know how to work the steering wheel and how to work the accelerator and the brake appropriately. You have to be able to physically perform those functions, kind of like patting your head and rubbing your stomach at the same time, working your feet, working your hands together. You have to be able to judge your speed. You have to be able to judge your depth perception. Where's the stop sign at? Where's the line at? I got to keep my car in between these lines, regardless of whether there are other vehicles around. You're required to maintain proper control of your car. All those things, divided attention, being able to think, being able to act. And then we have the effects of alcohol. And what does alcohol do to us? Well, we saw what it does. It slows you down. Your memory becomes suspect. You become unresponsive, kind of staring off into outer space a little bit, unsteady on your feet. You can't really focus on things properly. What did you see this? You saw him roll through that stop sign, misjudging his speed, misjudging where that stop sign was, not realizing it was there. Do we all become distracted from time to time? Sure, but let's couple that with that crazy turn that he took, that took him all the way clearly across those double yellow lines. Not being able to control the car properly. He was going too fast through that intersection to begin with. He should have stopped, but he was still moving, so he couldn't control his car in a manner that would let him stay in the proper lane of travel. Impaired reactions. Then he overcorrected, right? He comes back over the fog lines and swerves again. All indicators of the effects of alcohol slowing the body's ability to mentally process information and physically send signals to the body. That strong odor of alcoholic beverage, it's not there for a coincidence. And if it really was that windy, that'd be kind of hard to smell, don't you think? Because the air would kind of keep blowing through and you wouldn't really catch that odor, but it was a strong odor of alcoholic beverage. Yes, he claims to have had a couple of drinks through the statements, but do we know what those drinks were? No. They were enough to get him to a .115 just an hour after being arrested. Still being up well over the legal limit. All right? Divided attention activities, what are they? The standardized field sobriety tests. You have to do multiple tasks at one time. You have to be able to follow instructions, listen to them first, then follow them. Maintain your attention to what you're doing. Maintain your attention on more than one thing because you have to both walk and count your steps out loud and remember to keep your hands to the ground. You have to remember to keep your leg up, keep your hands down, count out loud. You have to be able to divide your attention, do multiple things at one time. And you saw both physically and mentally. He did try very hard. We'll give him that. We can give him an A for effort. That's fine. He was trying very hard to do the very best that he possibly could, but the problem was that the alcohol was preventing him from doing that. It impaired him. It slowed him down. It caused balance problems, and ultimately he was unable to balance on either test. He stepped off the line on the walk and turn. He missed the heel to toe, and on the one-leg stand, he kept putting his foot down 3 times. Simple test to determine impairment on an individual. Even when he was just standing there, it was swaying. They want to blame it on the wind? You all saw that video. The very beginning of that video, those trees are still, the leaves are barely moving. You could hardly tell the video is actually running because you don't have any frame of reference of anything moving in that video. It wasn't that windy. The officer had absolutely no problem. Yes, defendant's slender. You can see that. You heard testimony, I believe, about what his approximate weight was. It wasn't blowing him down. Defense can pick apart 1 thing, 2 things, 3 things, but how many things can they keep picking apart and finding excuses for before it becomes just that, excuses. This officer told you that he based his decision on the totality of the circumstances. It wasn't just any one thing that caused him to form that opinion, and it shouldn't be any one thing that causes you to reach the same conclusion that he was driving while under the influence of alcohol. It's the totality of the circumstances. It is everything that we've got up here, and whatever you heard in evidence or testimony that we missed on this diagram, that you should consider the totality of the circumstances. The bloodshot glassy eyes, the strong odor of alcohol, failing to stop, crossing the center line, crossing the fog line. That weird stop, wouldn't you park kind of parallel to the curb? He didn't even try, it appeared. He wasn't able to try. We know he was drinking. We know he was driving. We're asking you to go back and find the defendant guilty of driving while under the influence of alcohol. This isn't just something that the defendant did to himself. Driving under the influence of alcohol affects everybody. He was a danger to himself that day because of the sold reactions, but he was also a danger to anybody else he may have met on the street. And we're asking you to find him guilty of driving under the influence of alcohol and driving with a blood alcohol content above 0.08. Thank you.